You are not addicted to validation because you are insecure. You are addicted because your brain learned a specific trade. It will rent out your self-trust to whoever reacts the loudest. And the moment you see that trade happening in real time, you cannot unsee it. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps this channel reach people who are tired of shallow psychology. And if this hits a nerve, tap like. It tells the algorithm this is worth distributing. All right, if you are watching this, you have probably had the same weird experience I have had. You make a decision that feels right, then you wait. You wait for a text back, you wait for someone to approve it, you wait for a result that proves you did not just hallucinate your own judgment. And if the result is good, you feel solid. If the result is bad, you feel stupid. Not because you are weak, but because you built your sense of truth on an unstable measurement system. This is not just about confidence, it is about epistemology. It is about how you decide what is real about you when you cannot outsource the answer. Most people never connect those dots. They think validation is a feeling problem. It is actually a calibration problem. Here is what is actually happening. Your mind has two very different ways of producing certainty. One is internal and slow. It is built from predictions, error correction, memory, and pattern recognition. The other is external and fast. It is built from social feedback because, evolutionarily, social feedback was survival feedback. Exile used to mean death. Now, so your nervous system treats other people as instruments, like sensors. The problem is that in modern life, those sensors are noisy, biased, and monetized. So you are calibrating your identity using broken equipment, and then you wonder why you do not trust yourself. Let me show you what I mean with a specific mechanism that almost nobody talks about. Self-trust is not a vibe. Self-trust is a credit score your brain assigns to your own predictions. Think about this for a second. Every day you make micro-predictions. If I speak up, I will be respected. If I rest, I will fall behind. If I try, I will fail. If I say no, they will leave. Then you act and the world responds. Your brain logs it. Over time, it learns whether your predictions are accurate. That is self-trust, how much weight your brain gives your own model of reality. Now here is where it gets interesting. External validation hijacks that system because it makes your prediction score dependent on other people's reactions, not on the quality of your prediction process. So you can be right for the wrong reasons and get rewarded, or you can be right for the right reasons and get punished socially. Both cases destroy self-trust because the brain is not just tracking outcomes, it is tracking what caused the outcome. This is called credit assignment in learning theory. Your brain is always asking what should get the credit for success and what should get the blame for failure. If you constantly assign credit to other people's approval, you train yourself to believe you are not the author of your own good outcomes. And if you assign blame to yourself every time other people disapprove, you train yourself to believe your judgment is dangerous. You can feel this in real life. You post something online. If it performs well, you tell yourself, okay, I guess I'm allowed to believe this. If it performs poorly, you tell yourself, maybe I am not that person. That is not humility. That is you letting an algorithm write your identity. And it gets darker. Because the need for validation is not just about wanting approval, it is about avoiding the internal sensation of uncertainty. Your nervous system would rather accept a painful, stable story than tolerate an ambiguous, open one. So it grabs whatever social feedback is available and uses it to close the loop. But if your self-trust is a prediction credit score, then the goal is not to feel confident. The goal is to rebuild accurate credit assignment. You want your brain to start saying, I can rely on how I think, not just on what people clap for. Hold that thought because the next layer explains why some people become validation proof while still being deeply social. It is not willpower, it is architecture. Second insight. Most people think external validation is information. It is not. It is a negotiation signal. When someone praises you, they are not only describing you, they are shaping you. Compliments can be control, criticism can be control, silence can be control. Validation is often a bid to set your behavior to a preferred setting. Notice the pattern here. The people who validate you the most enthusiastically are often validating the version of you that benefits them. The easy you, the available you, is the never makes it awkward you. So you learn unconsciously that being trusted by yourself risks losing social safety. This is why building self-trust feels socially expensive, because in many environments, it is. Here is the mechanism behind this. Humans are status-sensitive animals. We continuously scan for acceptance cues and rejection cues. But your brain does not just scan for whether you are accepted. It scans for what part of you is being accepted. And then it reinforces that part. So if your environment rewards performance and punishes honesty, you do not just become performative. You become alienated from your own internal signals. Because your internal signals are inconvenient to the social contract you are living in. Let me make it painfully concrete. You say you are tired. Someone jokes, must be nice. You learn to doubt your fatigue. You say you do not want to go. Someone says, do not be boring. You learn to doubt your preference. You say you want more. Someone says, be grateful. You learn to doubt your ambition. Over time, you stop checking in with yourself, not because you do not know how, but because checking in creates conflict. And your nervous system is conflict avoidant when it associates conflict with abandonment. So self-trust is not just personal, it is relational. It depends on whether you are in a context where your inner signals are allowed to exist. Now here is the twist that most advice misses. You do not fix this by cutting everyone off and becoming a lone wolf. That just replaces external validation with external defiance, which is still external. And you fix it by changing what you use other people for. Most people use people as judges. A judge gives a verdict, good or bad, right or wrong, worthy or unworthy. That is validation addiction. Healthy people use people as mirrors and maps. A mirror reflects without declaring a verdict. A map gives information about terrain without telling you who you are. So the question is not, how do I stop caring what people think? That is childish. The real question is, how do I extract information from feedback without making it a verdict on myself? And that leads to the third insight, and this one is the engine room. Your need for validation spikes when you have no internal measurement protocol. If you do not define what good means ahead of time, you will always ask the crowd afterward. Think about how science works. A good experiment is not decided after the results. It is pre-registered. The criteria are defined before you look at the data, specifically to prevent you from moving the goalposts to protect your ego. Most people live the opposite way. They do the thing, then they look around for someone to tell them what it meant. So building self-trust means pre-registering your personal metrics. I know that sounds clinical, but stay with me, because this is the practical bridge between psychology and behavior. The moment you set internal metrics, external validation stops being oxygen and becomes weather. It still matters, but it does not decide whether you can breathe. Here is a simple example. You have a difficult conversation. If your metric is, they must like me afterward, you will betray yourself. If your metric is, I said the truth with respect and clarity, you can evaluate yourself regardless of their reaction. Or you create something. If your metric is, it must get applause, you will either chase trends or freeze. If your metric is, I expressed the idea I actually believe and improved one specific skill, you can trust yourself even in silence. Now, a lot of people try to do this and fail because they choose fake metrics. They pick metrics that still depend on other people, just indirectly. Like, I will be the kind of person people respect. That is still external. Respect is not under your control. So what metrics actually work? Ones that meet three criteria. 1, they are behavior-based, not outcome-based. 2, they are observable, not emotional. 3, they are repeatable, in a meaning you can do them again tomorrow. I showed up for 40 minutes. Observable, repeatable, under your control. I did not abandon myself in the conversation. That sounds vague, but you can operationalize it. Did you say what you meant? Did you ask for what you needed? Did you distort your own reality to keep peace? Now watch what happens. When you have internal metrics, your brain finally has clean data to assign credit properly. It can say, I did the thing I said mattered. That is self-trust. And now I want to hit you with a mid-video reset, because if you only take one idea from this, it should be this. Flip everything I just said. The opposite of validation addiction is not self-validation. It is self-evidence. Most people try to talk themselves into self-trust. Affirmations, mantras, hype. That is still begging, just from yourself. And your brain knows when you are lying. Self-trust is built the same way trust in anyone is built. Evidence over time. But here is the part that changes everything. The evidence that matters most is not whether you succeed. It is whether you update honestly after you fail. Because your brain is not asking, are we perfect? Your brain is asking, are we safe to follow? If every mistake turns into self-hatred, your brain learns that your leadership is dangerous. If every mistake turns into learning and repair, your brain learns that you are a stable authority. So the practice is not be confident. The practice is be correctable. Now let us build the framework, because you need something you can run like a protocol. I call it the 3 contracts. A contract is an agreement your brain can test, not a goal, not a mood. A contract. Contract 1 is the perception contract. This is about reality. Most people break trust with themselves by gaslighting their own perception. You feel resentment, you call it gratitude. You feel tired, you call it laziness. You feel a boundary, you call it selfishness. That is an internal betrayal. So the perception contract is simple. When you notice a signal, you name it accurately before you interpret it morally. Not, I am a bad person for feeling jealous. Just, I feel jealousy. Not, I should not be anxious. Just, I feel anxiety. You stop turning signals into verdicts. Why does this build self-trust? Because your brain starts learning, when I send information, it gets received. That is the first requirement of an internal alliance. Contract 2 is the promise contract. This is about behavior. People think self-trust comes from making big promises. It does not. Big promises are often a way to buy a feeling of worthiness in advance. Then you fail, and you confirm the story that you cannot rely on yourself. The promise contract is, make smaller promises, keep them aggressively, and treat broken promises like data, not shame. If you say you will do 10 minutes, do 10 minutes. If you say you will text someone back today, do it. And if you do not punish yourself. You audit. What happened? Did you overestimate energy? Did you avoid discomfort? Did you say yes to impress someone? You learn your own operating system. Keeping small promises rebuilds that credit score we talked about because your brain starts predicting, when I commit, I follow through. That is literal trust. Contract 3 is the feedback contract. This is about other people. You are not going to stop receiving feedback. The world will keep talking. The question is what you do with the data. So the feedback contract has 2 steps. First, you translate feedback into information. Second, you decide whether that information is relevant to your metrics. If someone says, "That was annoying," the information might be, "My delivery triggered them." That could be about your tone, or it could be about their sensitivity. You do not know yet, so you ask, does this feedback map onto a metric I care about? If your metric was clarity and respect, you can evaluate. Was I unclear? Was I disrespectful? If yes, adjust. If no, you let the weather pass. This is the move that ends validation addiction. You stop treating reactions as verdicts, and you start treating them as inputs filtered through your pre-registered values. And notice how this changes your social life. You become harder to manipulate with praise and harder to control with disapproval, not because you are cold, but because you are measurable. Now I want to pull all of this into one unified idea, because it is easy to hear these insights as separate tips. They are not. They are one system. Self-trust is the experience of being internally governable. That sounds abstract, so let me ground it. A person who trusts themselves can do 3 things consistently. They can perceive without distortion. They can commit without drama. They can update without collapse. Perceive without distortion means you do not moralize signals. You treat emotions as information, not as identity. Commit without drama means you do not use grand promises to regulate self-worth. You use small, repeatable behaviors to generate evidence. Update without collapse means you do not interpret mistakes as proof you are broken. You interpret mistakes as calibration. You become correctable. When you do these 3, external validation loses its grip because you are no longer using it to decide what is real. You already have a process for deciding what is real. And this is the part nobody tells you. Building self-trust without external validation will initially feel like loneliness. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because your nervous system is used to outsourcing certainty. When you stop outsourcing, you feel the raw, unanswered question of your own life. That is not a crisis. That is adulthood. So here is a concrete challenge you can run for 7 days. Do not try to be confident. Run the contracts. Once per day, name one signal accurately without judging it. That is the perception contract. Once per day, make one small promise that is almost embarrassing in its simplicity, and keep it. That is the promise contract. Once per day, take one piece of feedback, translate it into information, then ask whether it applies to your metrics. That is the feedback contract. At the end of the week, you will not just feel different, you will have evidence, and your brain does not argue with evidence. If you want a final thought to sit with, it is this: the person you become is not shaped by who validates you, it is shaped by what you treat as proof. So the question is, what are you using as proof of who you are?